Greetings, this is Olga Mozenkova in the studio with you. Today, here's what we're talking about. Russia is on fire. Drones are blowing up a gas complex and an oil refinery. And near Pokrovsk, the occupiers risk being trapped in a cauldron. Collaborators are hastily fleeing from the occupied Kherson region. The West is supplying the Ukrainian armed forces with billions and missiles, while the US threatens Moscow with the label of a terrorist state. Lavrov is coming up with excuses for Putin, just so he doesn't have to meet with Zelensky. All of this in just a few seconds. But right now, please like this video and subscribe to the Ukraine Today channel so you don't get lost on YouTube. Well then, let's get started. In Russia, there is a wave of fires, explosions, and panic. Ukrainian drones have delivered powerful strikes against the Kremlin's war machine. Let's break everything down step by step. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, Saratov, and other Russian cities, the carpet plan was put into effect. Airports are paralyzed due to drone attacks. Russians spent the night on mats and benches. A fire broke out at the port of Ust-Luga in the Leningrad region after at least 3 drone strikes. The strike hit the Gazprom Ust-Luga gas processing complex, a key facility of the Baltic gas chemical cluster. The region's governor, Drozdenko, claims that the fire was caused by debris from a downed drone at the Novatek terminal and alleges that 10 drones were supposedly shot down. But Bild military analyst Julian Robke is convinced that the drones hit their target precisely. In Syzran, Samara region, an oil refinery is on fire after a massive drone attack. The extent of the damage is being clarified. In the Belgorod People's Republic, there were about 7 explosions. Russian social media report an attack on the Kursk nuclear power plant. Officially, air defense shot down a drone, but its debris caused an explosion that damaged a transformer. Air defense was actively engaged in the Tver, Smolensk, and also in the Bryansk People's Republic. Oh, Russians. What's with your faces? Things aren't going smoothly for the occupiers at the front either. ZID military correspondents are whining that it's a complete failure near Pokrovsk. They say the Ukrainian armed forces entered the rear through the settlement of Mirna. Now the Russian soldiers are under threat of encirclement. And it's all because of the command of the 5th Brigade, which apparently reports victories from some parallel reality, because in reality they can't hold their positions. And the soldiers? Who needs them anyway? Just more cannon fodder.
Hi, my dear. My friend and I have ended up in a very tough situation. There are only 2 of us left from the group, me and Vasya. We got in touch with the commander. We asked for permission to retreat, but he wouldn't let us. He said if we retreated, he would personally zero us out. So my friend and I decided to turn off the radio, ditch our rifles, and try to surrender. But we're alive. We're not KIA, not wounded, and not deserters. We just don't have any other options left. There's only one option, to surrender, that's it.
Surrendering is the only smart move for the occupiers. If, of course, your life is more valuable to you. So think about it, those of you who still have time. Meanwhile, in the occupied part of Kherson region, collaborators with their families and suitcases are fleeing en masse to Crimea. While their Russian world is collapsing, partisans from the Atesh movement report the occupiers have started burning their own military equipment in the Kherson region. Watch our report to learn about the reasons behind the growing panic.
Collaborators are fleeing from the left bank of the Dnipro in the Kherson region to Crimea. They are actively packing their belongings and moving their families. This is being reported by the Atesh partisan movement.
Atesh agents report that employees of the occupation administrations and deputies from Holopristan, Kakhovka, Novokakhovka, and Hornostaivka have started leaving for Crimea. There is an active relocation of families underway.
Atesh does not specify the reason for the move, but it's not hard to guess. The occupiers are afraid. And it's not just minor collaborators, but also high-ranking ones. For example, Volodymyr Saldo. A few days ago, information appeared online that the so-called governor of Kherson region called Moscow in a panic.
Saldo called and said that among local officials in the Kherson region there are strange rumors going around. Supposedly, Vladimir Vladimirovich only needs the DPR and LPR, and Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions will be given back to Ukraine. This issue is being actively discussed there. He was told that this is nonsense and that someday we'll take Kherson back. And Zaporizhzhia, the special military operation, thank God, is not ending.
But it seems that even the collaborators have stopped believing the Kremlin. As a result, panic and fear. Fear that Ukraine will soon take back what is theirs.
Knowing what the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, General Syrsky, said, that wars are not won by defense alone, everyone understands perfectly well that sooner or later the moment will come when they will have to answer for what they've done. They will have to answer when the defense forces go on the offensive. The fact that some Russian officials, those who have Ukrainian roots, let's say, are trying to move their families to the territory of the Russian Federation is a trend that, well, let's say, is not something that has only appeared in recent days.
Traitors and occupiers fear not only the upcoming offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces, but also death at the hands of Ukrainian underground fighters.
An important point is the partisan underground movement. We see how often the occupiers, so-called top occupiers, are eliminated by our partisans, our intelligence, and the security service of Ukraine. And after all, for the occupier, it's only a matter of time before he is eliminated. Now they have started to realize this.
The Russian army in the Kherson region is also starting to see the truth. The occupiers have even started burning their own equipment just to avoid going to the front lines. Ates showed one of these arson incidents. Equipment from the 24th Motorized Rifle Regiment is burning. The partisans state that the situation in the regiment is critical. Among Russian soldiers, there are more and more sochniks, those who desert their units and run away. The reason is the usual one for the Russian army, the command. The soldiers complain about harsh and incompetent orders from the command, which have led to heavy losses for the unit, and the soldiers were left at their positions without electronic warfare equipment, alone against Ukrainian drones.
Most often, as they say, these individuals put on their skis with weapons firmly in hand, choosing to desert their posts and then head directly to Sochi. This act of desertion, as it is officially called in Russian, is typically undertaken in order to run away, to escape from their current situation, and to try to survive in that particular manner, seeking a new life away from the conflict. Some find a way to surrender and become prisoners of war. That's it. But as a rule, such cases of leaving desertion are quite frequent.
For now, we can't say that Sochi is a mass phenomenon, but these are not isolated incidents either. Russian soldiers are increasingly refusing to dance to the tune of their commanders, for whom they are nothing more than cannon fodder. Local traitors and collaborators also understand the inevitability of the Ukrainian armed forces' arrival. But will they manage to escape in time?
And while the Kremlin is busy putting out fires caused by drones, the West is fully arming Ukraine. According to the Wall Street Journal, citing American officials, Trump approved the delivery of 3,350 cruise missiles from Iran with a range of 450 kilometers. But so far, the United States has not made an official statement about this. However, Europe is already purchasing air defense systems and GMLRS rocket systems with a range of 145 kilometers from the Americans for us. Norway and Germany are paying for 2 Patriot systems, which can shoot down ballistic missiles and drones. NATO is increasing its assistance in 2025. In 2024, they provided $50 billion, and this year it's already $33 billion, but the plan is to reach last year's figure. And for Ukraine's Independence Day, Canada allocated $1 billion for drones and armored vehicles, plus $10 million for medical aid and cybersecurity. It seems the Kremlin is about to get a new label. The United States may officially designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism if Moscow does not return the illegally deported Ukrainian children. This was stated by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on social network X. The politician reminded that during the war, the Russian side abducted more than 19,000 minors. More details about the grim prospects for Putin's Russia in our report.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The United States may officially designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. This was stated by Senator Lindsey Graham. Graham noted that the United States may resort to this measure if Russia does not return the abducted Ukrainian children.
We remember Olenivka. We vividly remember how Russia brutally burned Ukrainian prisoners of war who had been tragically released from Mariupol by explicit order of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief and under the solemn guarantees of the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and other significant guarantors that they would be, well, absolutely inviolable, and that all the established Geneva and Hague conventions and so on would be meticulously observed in relation to them.
The senator pointed out that during the war between Russia and Ukraine, the Russian Federation abducted more than 19,000 Ukrainian children.
The abduction of children from their homeland is a disgusting and barbaric act. As I have stated since the beginning of this year, I intend to push for the adoption of a law that recognizes Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism under U.S. law if it does not return the children.
The politician emphasized that if such a decision is made, cooperation with Russia will become unacceptable for other countries and businesses.
Recognizing Russia as a terrorist state, a sponsor of terrorism, well, economic sanctions should be imposed, negotiations should be made more difficult, because how can you negotiate with terrorists? Everyone has relationships, everyone has some kind of trade, which until recently existed with Russia. There is this or that domestic agenda. We need to remember and understand this. When we talk about Macron, for example, or about France's position, we need to understand Macron's own stance and that of his party. We need to talk about the situation in Germany, where the Alternative for Germany party will speculate on this, or that same Sahra Wagenknecht. We need to understand Orban and Fico, who will block the implementation of such things at the EU level.
Since 2022, Ukraine has been raising the issue with Washington about recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. We can state that so far this has been unsuccessful.
Biden believed that this would derail negotiations with Russia. But if Donald Trump, and when Donald Trump, I am absolutely convinced that when Donald Trump fully realizes and truly comprehends that he is being deliberately deceived, then I genuinely think this comprehensive strategy could be effectively put into immediate action. And then I firmly believe that the subsequent, well, let's say the practical implementation of such a significant and impactful status would be quite remarkably effective and highly advantageous against the Russian Federation.
Because of the silence of the political world, what Putin is doing in Ukraine right now is in fact being legitimized for other terrorists like him.
Russia is not only a sponsor of terrorism, not only a country of terrorists. Russia is also a product of terror. Because Putin is nothing else, all of Russia, its chauvinism, its aggression, is nothing more than the second derivative of the price of oil. And the price of oil when Putin came to power in December 1999 was $9.8 per barrel. And it started to rise after the terrorist attacks on America, on New York, on the World Trade Center, on the Twin Towers. And at that point, the Americans, with the help of their allies, basically needed to eradicate the nest of this terror.
In 2023, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe designated Russia as a state sponsor of the Wagner terrorist group. At this point, the United States may officially recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism if Moscow does not return the illegally deported Ukrainian children to their homeland. Whether Russia will be held accountable for its other crimes, both in Ukraine and around the world, unfortunately remains an open question.
Lavrov is once again juggling excuses. Supposedly, Putin is open to negotiations, but Zelensky is being stubborn and the West is throwing obstacles in the way. Seriously. The very same Western countries that not long ago said there would be no negotiations with the Putin regime with Russia are now saying that if there are no negotiations or if the outcome doesn't suit them, then sanctions will be imposed on Russia again.
They're just looking for an excuse to prevent negotiations. And they want it to happen not through their own fault, not through Zelensky's fault either, who is also being stubborn and putting forward certain conditions, demanding an immediate meeting with Putin no matter what. It's an attempt to disrupt the process that was, in fact, initiated by Presidents Putin and Trump, which yielded quite good results. And we hope that these attempts will be thwarted.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin regime continues to suppress dissent. In Moscow, Putin's henchman detained blogger Arsen Markaryan for his anti-military statements. He came to meet with his followers, but was caught because of his streams where he praised the Ukrainian armed forces and spoke out against the Russian army.
There is one thing I really can't say for sure, whether it will happen or not, but I would like it to, and I tend to think that it will. I think Moscow will end up being bombed. I honestly believe that, in the end, Moscow and Red Square will be bombed. Everything is heading in that direction. Everything is heading that way. And only when Moscow or Red Square is bombed, only then will something finally get through to someone.
Now the blogger faces up to 5 years in prison. Russians! It seems that freedom of speech is clearly not in fashion for you. The Kremlin has clearly sent out new talking points. Now Russians are being told that Estonia is preparing to attack Russia. Yes, really. A country that is 300 times smaller than Russia.
At the same time, the Estonian Foreign Ministry has banned its citizens from traveling to Russia. Special attention should be paid to an article in the Polish publication Onet, which claims that Estonia is ready to launch a preemptive strike against Russia. Estonia against Russia. We'll strike first. We'll fight like absolute devils, loudly proclaims the bold headline, capturing immediate attention.
Propagandist Skabiva points to the increase in military spending to 5.4% of GDP and the construction of fences on the border as proof. In reality, it's the opposite. Tallinn is strengthening its defenses because of the threat of an attack from Putin. The Estonian Foreign Ministry openly calls the Baltics a potential conflict zone, and Lavrov has already gone so far as to deny the very statehood of Lithuania. And since we're talking about propaganda, it seems Solovyov has found a replacement. Young, cunning, and already a 7-year-long shadow of Putin, Pavel Zarubin. His show Moscow, Kremlin, Putin is among the top programs on state TV. And he himself has constant access to the bunker butcher. So how did a guy from a provincial town become the new face of Kremlin propaganda? Our journalists know the answer.
Have you ever truly wondered who precisely tells the entire world about the prominent figure of Vladimir Putin and how that information is disseminated? Meet Pavel Zarubin.
Only one program will show more than the others. A lot has remained behind the scenes for us.
He's already so handsome. Well, he really is very handsome.
He is a VGTRK correspondent who became the key face of the daily show Moscow, Kremlin, Putin, which, by the way, has been on air for 7 years now.
To anyone who has never seen the show Moscow, Kremlin, Putin, I would advise not to watch it.
These are not just reports. Every week, Pavel accompanies Putin literally everywhere, paying attention to the smallest details, whether it's a comb, a wash basin, or a cat crossing the road.
But he literally decided to do absolutely everything himself, utilizing various improvised tools and makeshift equipment. No one ever truly paid any attention whatsoever. But the matches by the cozy fireplace in the main meeting room were specifically manufactured in March of 2014. It was precisely then that tensions on the international stage began to escalate rapidly.
The show premiered in September 2018, right in the midst of protests against the pension reform. It was launched without warning, without any announcements, and the very first episode made an impact. Critics saw this as a new level of personality cult.
If we talk about the content itself, well, probably it's like, the very essence of it.
It's fundamentally about how Vladimir Putin truly wants to be perceived, how he desires to appear to the world as the most profoundly wise, the most exceptionally athletic, and indeed the strongest individual, in short, the very absolute best in the entire world, as he is consistently seen and portrayed by Pavel Zarubin, his loyal and dedicated press secretary. Of course, almost everyone would genuinely wish to meet someone in life who looks at them with such profound admiration, precisely the way Pavel Zarubin consistently looks at Vladimir Putin.
Just look, Pavel talks about how Putin washes his face, how he cleans his limousine, or how he catches a pencil that fell off the table, all with an admiring tone. His style is, let's say, complimentary to the extreme.
He literally runs around and bends into whatever positions are most convenient for Putin. That's all that was required from someone like him. So his profound spinelessness here and this noticeable pallor actually gave him a significant advantage, allowing him to navigate the situation more effectively.
But how did Zarubin end up so close to the president?
He turned out to be unique. Now he's being copied in a whole range of countries. From our point of view, Zarubin is a very talented journalist. And most importantly, he covers the president's activities very appropriately, which absolutely matches the editorial interests of VGTRK and our interest in informing the public about what the president is doing and how.
He comes from Beloretsk and is a graduate of RFU. He started out in Yekaterinburg with liberal views. He was seen as a romantic idealist, dreaming of telling the truth and stirring people with his words. But since 2005, he has been part of the Press Pool, a group of journalists with access to Putin.
I came in completely inexperienced. I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything. Absolutely nothing. All I had was a wild desire to work.
The pandemic showed just how much Zarubin demonstrates his loyalty. For other journalists, quarantine was an obstacle, but he spent months in isolation just to be close to Putin. He is called the president's microphone stand, living in the Kremlin's clean zone.
These aren't friendly relationships, it's more of a Putin-style chumminess, which I think comes from the KGB school. He likes to create an aura around himself that outwardly seems easygoing. But these little jokes and quips don't actually put anyone at ease. Everyone still stands at attention, everyone is still afraid, everyone is still tense. And this is his game, this act of, look at me, see how cool I am. And everyone responds, yes, yes, you're very cool.
He gets into negotiations where others aren't allowed. He stood by the office door with a camera, whispering reports from under the table during Putin's meeting with Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang.
There will be the signing of a large number of important documents, the texts of which are also being closely monitored right now.
That's how in 2019 Peskov told Putin with a smirk. Zarubin caught up with Trump and asked, "What do you think of Putin?" Trump replied, "I think he is a great guy." Zarubin published this 8 times. So who is he, a journalist or a propagandist? Pavel Zarubin is the face of the regime who tells the story of Putin from start to finish, with enthusiasm and without irony. And that's why many believe that he has become not just a reporter but a mirror in which Putin sees exactly what he wants to see.
That's all for today's insightful presentation. Please kindly take a moment to like this video and absolutely do not forget to subscribe to our official channel Ukraine Today so you definitely don't miss out on any of our valuable upcoming episodes. We eagerly look forward to seeing you again next time.